Today we're going to talk about financial literacy. So we're going to start talking about all of the ways that we can manage our money more effectively, and the ways that we can manage our resources more effectively. Okay, so today we're going to focus on the resources. The official definition of a resource is a stock or supply of money, materials, staff, and other assets that can be drawn on by a person or organization in order to function effectively. That's an okay definition, but I think we could write a better one. So that one just seems like there's a lot of information. It's really clunky. Okay, so if you were in class, we would talk about, okay, how can we break this up and make it more simplified or easier to remember? Okay, so if I did a stock or supply of money, materials, staff, and other assets, okay, if I wanted to shorten that up, I could shorten it up by just putting stuff. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. So I'm just gonna make that stuff, okay? That can be drawn on by a person or organization. So if it's something that we can draw on, it has to be something that we have. So that can be something that we can use. So let's make that can be drawn on by a person or organization, stuff we can use. Okay, and in order to function effectively, this one's going to be slightly longer, but I think it's going to be a lot more simplified. We could turn that into to get the job done. Okay, so that job can be just about anything. It can be something that you're doing at home, something that you're doing at school, something that you're doing at your actual job. Okay, so by that definition, a lot of things can be a resource. So the next thing that we have been doing in class is I have everybody in class go through and they have to name a resource that we have in the room. So for pretty much everything that is listed as a resource, I have a way to say, like, yeah, that is a resource. So a lot of people have used the smartboard as an example. So the smartboard is a resource. It allows us to see things that are on my computer. Normally it lets me write on the board, but that's not working today. Okay, the whiteboard is a resource. So when the smartboard doesn't let me write on it, I can write things onto the dry erase marker board. People have said the lights. So we have a room with no windows. So because we have a room with no windows, the lights are pretty important so that we can see what's going on. So we have people who say tables, the chairs, your computer, my computer, pencil, paper. All of those things are resources. Inevitably, someone says the clock. The clock is absolutely a resource. So the clock tells us how much time do we have until lunch, or how much time do we have until the end of the day. What time is it? Okay, but there's a resource that's associated with the clock that some people don't really think about as a resource, okay? And that thing is time. Time is a resource, okay? Time is a resource that we don't always use effectively. We talked about that a couple days ago. So with time being a resource and us not using our resource of time very well or very effectively, I want you to think about it this way. If you wasted your resource of money, which is also a resource, at the same rate that you wasted your resource of time, what kind of predicament would we be in? Okay, so we can really, just in general, kind of think about how can we better use all of our resources by making even like teeny tiny small incremental changes. Okay, so one of the ways is that you can dry your hands using just one paper towel. So if you have not already taken a look at this video, it's in the presentation that's linked on Google Classroom. Okay, so I want you to watch this video to see how you can dry your hands using just one paper towel. What I want you to get out of that video is that just making a super duper small change, you can make a pretty big impact and use only what you need as far as your resources. So we really want to make sure that we're focusing on just using just what we need in order to get the job done. Be on the lookout for part 2, which will be added to this video in a second. Okay, A few things that I have done in order to lessen my impact on the planet have also had some unintentional financial benefits for me. So one of the ways is I used to use single-use disposable water bottles. So I would buy cases of water, usually when I was in college, and I would recycle them, which was great. But I was spending a lot of money buying just like disposable plastic water bottles. And so by the end of my college career, I switched to a reusable water bottle that I filled with my Brita pitcher. So in addition to being better for the environment and being better for the earth, it also helped to make sure that I was saving a little bit of money in the process, which is an added bonus. So the less we are using, it might be a higher cost initially, so my water bottle was more than a case of water, but I've used it far more than I would have used one case of water. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a look at the Lorax. So I'm sure you've seen this book before or heard it before, maybe you've watched the movie. So we're gonna do a little bit of a read aloud, and I'm gonna stop every once in a while and just kind of show you some of the things that I want you to notice about the story. At the far end of town where the grickle grass grows and the wind smells slow and sour when it blows, and no birds ever sing except old crows, is the street of the lifted Lorax. And deep in the grickle grass, some people say, if you look deep enough, you can still see today where the Lorax once stood just as long as it could before somebody lifted the Lorax away. What was the Lorax, and why was it there, and why was it lifted and taken somewhere from the far end of town where the grickle grass grows? The old Onceler still lives here. Ask him. He knows. You won't see the Onceler. Don't knock at his door. He stays in his lurkum on top of his store. He lurks in his lurkum cold under the roof, where he makes his own clothes out of muffered muff. And on special dank midnights in August he peeks out of the shutters, and sometimes he speaks and tells how the Lorax was lifted away. He'll tell you, perhaps, if you're willing to pay. On the end of a rope he lets down a tin pail, and you have to toss in 15 cents and a nail and the shell of a great-great-great-grandfather snail. Then he pulls up the pail, makes a most careful count to see if you've paid him the proper amount. Then he hides what you paid him away in his snub, his secret strange hole in his grubulous glove. Then he grunts, I will call you by whisper-mophone, for the secrets I tell are for your ears alone. Slop! Down slips the whisper-mophone to your ear, and the old Onceler's whispers are not very clear, since they have to come down through a snurgly hose, and he sounds as if he had smallish bees up his nose. Now I'll tell you, he said, with his teeth sounding gray, how the Lorax got lifted and taken away. It all started way back, such a long, long time back. Way back in the days when the grass was still green, and the pond was still wet, and the clouds were still clean, and the song of the swami swans rang out in space, one morning I came to this glorious place. And I first saw the trees, the truffula trees, the bright-colored tufts of the truffula trees, mile after mile in the fresh morning breeze. And under the trees I saw brown barbaloots frisking about in their barbaloot suits as they played in the shade and ate truffula fruits. From the rippleless pond came the comfortable sound of the humming fish humming while splashing around. But those trees, those truffula trees, all my life I'd been searching for trees such as these. The touch of their tufts was much softer than silk, and they had the sweet smell of fresh butterfly milk. I felt a great leaping of joy in my heart. I knew just what I'd do. I unloaded my cart. In no time at all, I had built a small shop. Then I chopped down a truffula tree with one chop, and with great skillful skill and with great speedy speed, I took the soft tuft and I knitted a thneed. The instant I'd finished, I'd heard a gazump. I looked and I saw something pop out of the stump of the tree I'd chopped down. It was sort of a man. Describe him, that's hard. I don't know if I can. He was shortish and oldish and brownish and mossy, and he spoke with a voice that was sharpish and bossy. Mister, he said with a sawdusty sneeze, I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongues, and I'm asking you, sir, at the top of my lungs. He was very upset as he shouted and puffed, What's that thing that you've made out of my truffula tuft? Look, Lorax, I said, there's no cause for alarm. I chopped just one tree. I am doing no harm. I am being quite useful. This thing is a thneed. A thneed is a fine something that all people need. It's a shirt, it's a sock, it's a glove, it's a hat. It has other uses, yes, far beyond that. You can use it for carpets, for pillows, for sheets, or curtains, or covers for bicycle seats. The Lorax said, Sir, you are crazy with greed. There is no one on earth who would buy that fool thneed. But, as most of you know, a lot of people bought that fool thneed. So what I want you to get from that is we as a society have a tendency to, as soon as we see something that we think is super cool, super awesome, super fun, we decide that we have to have it and we need to get our hands on it and we need to buy it. And it might be great for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a couple months, but then we lose interest in it. Something else, comes around and draws our attention, and then that's the thing that we want to get. And then before you know it, our house is just filled with stuff and junk that we don't really need. But the very next minute, I proved he was wrong, for just at that minute, a chap came along, and he thought that the thneed I had knitted was great. He happily bought it for $3.98. I laughed at the Lorax. You poor stupid guy, you never can tell what some people will buy. I repeat, cried the Lorax, I speak for the trees. I'm busy, I told him. Shut up if you please. I rushed across the room and in no time at all built a radio phone. I put in a quick call. I called all my brothers, my uncles, my aunts, and I said, listen here, here's a wonderful chance for the whole Wentzler family to get mighty rich. Get over here fast, take the road to North Nitch. Turn left at Wee Hawken, sharp right at South Stitch. And in no time at all, in the factory I built, the whole Wentzler family was working full tilt. We were all knitting thneeds just as busy as bees to the sound of the chopping of truffula trees. Then, oh baby, oh, how my business did grow. Now chopping one tree at a time was too slow. So I quickly invented my super axe hacker, which whacked off 4 truffula trees at one smacker. We were making thneeds 4 times as fast as before, and that Lorax, he didn't show up anymore. But the next week he knocked on my new office door. He snapped, I am the Lorax who speaks for the trees, but you seem to be chopping as fast as you please, and I'm also in charge of the brown barbaloots who played in the shade in their barbaloot suits and happily lived eating truffula fruits. Now, thanks to your hacking my trees to the ground, there's not enough truffula fruit to go round, and my poor barbaloots are all getting the crummies because they have gas and no food in their tummies. Okay, so sometimes even like especially we as consumers don't really think about kind of the impact on the amount of things that we buy that have an impact beyond just like us buying it, or if we are done using it, that item, whatever it is, being put in the landfill. But there are some definite things that can be not so great even in the production process, that maybe we don't see or we're not as aware of, but we should think about before we buy something. They loved living here, but I can't let them stay. They'll have to find food, and I hope that they may. Good luck, boys, he cried as he sent them away. I, the Wentzler, felt sad as I watched them all go, but business is business, and business must grow, regardless of crummies and tummies, I meant no harm, I most truly did not, but I had to grow bigger, so bigger I got. I biggered my factories, I biggered my roads, I biggered my wagons, I biggered the loads of the needs I shipped out. I was shipping them forth to the south, to the east, to the west, to the north. I went right on biggering, selling more thneeds, and I biggered my money, which everyone needs. Then again he came back. I was fixing some pipes when the old nuisance Lorax came back with more gripes. I am the Lorax, he coughed and he whiffed, he sneezed and he snuffed and he snargled, he sniffed. Wentzler, he cried with a crufulous croak. Wentzler, you're making such smogulous smoke. My poor swami swans, why they can't sing a note. No one can sing who has smog in his throat. And so, said the Lorax, please pardon my cough. They cannot live here, so I'm sending them off. Where will they go? I don't hopefully know. They may have to fly for a month or a year to escape the smog you've smogged up around here. What's more, snapped the Lorax, his dander was up. Let me say a few words about gluppity-glup. Your machinery chugs on day and night without stop, making gluppity-glup, also schloppity-schlop. And what do you do with this leftover goo? I'll show you, you dirty old Wentzler man, you. You're glumping the pond where the hummingfish hummed. No more can they hum, for their gills are all gummed. So I'm sending them off. Oh, their future is dreary. They'll walk on their fins and get woefully weary in search of some water that isn't so smeary. And then I got mad. I got terribly mad. I yelled at the Lorax, now listen here, Dad. All you do is yap, yap, and say bad, 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 bad. Well, I have my rights, sir, and I'm telling you that I intend to go on doing just what I do. And for your information, you Lorax, I'm figuring on biggering and biggering and biggering and biggering, turning more truffula trees into thneeds, which everyone needs. But they don't. They don't really need a thneed. And at that very moment, we heard a loud whack. From outside in the field came a sickening smack of an axe on a tree, and we heard the tree fall, the very last truffula tree of them all. Okay, so as you can see, it's completely wiped out. All of the trees on the hillside, there's none left. Okay, so we really need to think about the materials that even go into the making of the products that we buy that we really and truly don't really need. No more trees, no more needs, no more work to be done. So in no time, my uncles, my aunts, every one, all waved me goodbye. They jumped into my cars and drove away under the smoke-smuggered stars. Now all that was left neath the bad-smelling sky was my big empty factory, the Lorax and I. The Lorax said nothing, just gave me a glance, just gave me a very sad backwards glance as he lifted himself by the seat of his pants. And I'll never forget the grim look on his face when he hoisted himself and took leave of this place, through a hole in the smog without leaving a trace. And all that the Lorax left here in this mess was a small pile of rocks with one word, unless. Whatever that meant, well, I just couldn't guess. That was long, long ago, but each day since that day, I've sat here and worried away. Through the years while my buildings have fallen apart, I've worried about it with all of my heart. But now, said the Onceler, now that you're here, the words of the Lorax seem perfectly clear. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So, catch, calls the Onceler. He let something fall. It's a truffula seed. It's the last one of all. You're in charge of the last of the truffula seeds, and truffula trees are what everyone needs. Plant a new truffula. Treat it with care. Give it clean water and feed it fresh air. Grow a forest. Protect it from axes that hack. Then the Lorax and all of his friends may come back. Okay, so traditionally when you see this book, you read it, you've heard it, you've watched the video, it's all about the trees and it's all about saving the trees. Okay, but I want you to kind of expand your thinking to think about it as resources. So what resources do you actually need? Okay, what items do you actually need to buy? Because the items that you buy do have an impact on the amount of resources that are used, particularly the resource that you have of money. So the more we buy things that we don't really need, we just want because they look shiny and new and fun and awesome, the less money that we have for the things that we really care about. So that's going to be a theme that we kind of see woven in throughout all of our personal finance lessons, but that's where we're going to stop today. Okay, so just think about it. Think about this story. Think about what we talked about, or what I talked about. The next time you see something that's, shiny, fun, new, and awesome that you just have to have, and I want you to think about, do you really have to have it?